John Smoltz joining us. John, part of the Fox Sports 1 broadcast. Red Sox Rays for Game 1 and Game 2. That starts tomorrow night, followed by MLB Network's exclusive broadcast of Game 3 on Sunday at 4 Eastern. We were just talking about stadiums, John. If I said best stadium to pitch in, what would you say?
Today, best stadium. I mean, the old Astro Stadium just doesn't get any better than that. I mean, throw fastballs 95%, see if they can hit it out of the stadium. There's not many of those anymore unless Wrigley's blowing in. So I would say if the wind's blowing in, Wrigley. But in the stadiums today, I mean, Dodger Stadium's pretty fair. You know, I'm not – this marine layer thing that's been talked about, whether it's gone or there, the ball travels, it doesn't travel at night, travels during the day. But Dodger Stadium's a pretty fair place to pitch when the thick marine air is at night.
What's the worst stadium to pitch in?
Oh, my goodness. There's more of those than there's ever been. It's like, you know, Camden Yards is a great place to hit. Small American Ballpark in Cincinnati. I call it Small American Ballpark because it's very tiny. The Central seems to be one of the worst places to pitch when it comes to the teams. And of course, Colorado's not fun at all when you think about a visitor in Colorado. Great place to watch a game, not a great place to pitch if you're a pitcher.
What about San Francisco? That feels like there's parts of it that's a good pitcher's ballpark.
Yeah, the new stadium's fantastic as far as the weather. You know, the weather at Old Candlestick could have been you start at 70 and you finish at 40, it seemed like, when the layer would come in over that. I don't know who thought putting a stadium right behind that rock was a good idea, but I'm a fan of the new stadium in San Francisco. Very fair. If you hit it down the lines, you can go. So they've maximized what I thought was the impossible in the fact that they hit so many home runs. I didn't think that was part of I mean, this has been the most amazing year of storylines, of predictions that you never thought would happen. They're leading the case for the most unpredictable success story.
How does it happen?
You know what? I'd like to say this is not a formula for success long term. Year to year, they have made every right decision. They've had every right player in the right spot. Give their organization, managerial, all their strategy. I don't know that can continue year to year. You can't keep plugging in those kind of things. But I will say this: they're older guys which I'm a fan of because, you know, analytics says you're old, so you can't play at 30. They've had a little chip on their shoulder. They've been healthy and they have delivered big time. So that has been a kind of like an organization filled with players that you see there longer than most, and it's paying off. They've won a few championships. This year, I'll be the first to tell you, I got on, beginning of the year, no chance. They weren't even in the discussion. And that's why I said it's the most remarkable year I can ever remember from a team that maybe should have won 75 to 80 games, won 106 or 7. That to me is a great credit to their organization.
Are you all on board with the playoff format, the one-game playoffs?
No, I never have been. I can say that consistently. I understand why it was put in place. Ironically, it was probably put in place because of the 1993 Giants and Braves race to the pennant, and we won it on the last day, and the Giants had 103 wins and didn't make the playoffs. There comes the one-game playoff to try to secure a team like that situation. Now, fast forward this year, if both these teams end up not moving on, you're going to see a change, I believe, in the playoff format, because it's hard to imagine that you would have a 105-win team, which easily could lose to the St. Louis Cardinals, not move on. And our whole season is based on the, most wins. I think, if anything, Dan, I would tweak, if they don't want to make a wholesale change, I would tweak a scenario where you have tonight, the Cardinals should have to beat the Dodgers twice, right? I mean, the Dodgers won 100 and some games. The Cardinals did a great job down the stretch, but the team with the best record in the wild card should at least have an advantage to where they only have to win once and the second team has to win twice. Personally, I'd like to see playoffs always have a 2 out of 3. No matter what scenario you set out, it needs to be a series. You need to have a fighting chance. And I think we need to start rewarding the teams who have the best record, give them a bye, so that when they play a team that's already played 2 out of 3, there's your incentive for the team that's won all those games. Otherwise, it is a little bit more random.
Let me look at last night's game. Aaron Boone takes out Garrett Cole. And I don't know if you run the risk of embarrassing your pitcher, your $300 million pitcher, in a situation like that. I mean, I applaud Aaron Boone for doing it because I think it was the right call, but man, that's difficult for a guy who's probably got his job on the line, and you're going out there and taking the ball from your starting pitcher. What did you think of that move at the time?
Well, let's just say Garrett Cole, the last 3 outings haven't been Garrett Cole. And I know he had the hamstring injury, and there's probably something to do with that because when Garrett Cole doesn't look like Garrett Cole, you throw everything out the window because it's that one game scenario that you needed a great performance. And it just didn't look like he was on his top of his game. You don't have the time and luxury as a manager to factor in all that. So I thought it was a really good move to just at least give them. And it worked out because he got out of an impossible situation. Holmes did a great job. So those one-game playoffs are another reason why I don't like it. They're manager killers. You basically don't have the luxury of a lot of things because the panic and stress on that game doesn't leave you any room for error.
And the Yankees aren't good enough to hate anymore, right? One World Series in 17 years.
That's a good point because, the stress on the Dodgers and the Yankees was the highest it's ever been. The Dodgers won the World Series last year. They had 1 in 30 some years. Those are 2 iconic organizations. There's so much pressure on the Yankees right now, and certainly that organization for what they built. But you're right. This year just was a roller coaster year. They've been through everything. Their offense was hot and cold, and I think that's not a good formula for a deep run. I mean, they're certainly going to be right back there next year and could be the favorites. Who knows what the offseason brings. But this year was the streakiest, most unpredictable baseball season I've ever seen. You're talking about teams losing records on the road. And then you're talking about home teams, teams that have won games over 10 in a row multiple times. So it's a crazy year. It's one of those that I think a lot of people were waiting to see after the COVID year of the short season, how it was going to play out.
He's John Smoltz, the Hall of Famer, and he'll be part of Fox Sports 1's broadcast. Red Sox at the Rays, Game 1, and also Game 2. That starts tomorrow night. I look at the Dodgers situation where you've been great all year long, but then you run into one of the hottest teams that we've seen in recent memory. How do you handicap this game with these two?
Well, the beautiful thing for both teams, they have the pitcher they want on the mound. Sometimes you get into these games, you don't have the luxury. The Dodgers were almost forced to play that. It would have been interesting to see how the Dodgers played the one-game playoff to determine the division championship had they been in that spot. So I think there's some relief in that regard where they can put everything towards this one game. But it's a high stress and kind of flip of the coin. Adam Wainwright, the veteran, of course, my former teammate, both pitchers know how to pitch in big moments, so that won't be unnerving. It's going to come down to who can, kind of like last night's game, who can score first and create pressure on the manager.
I couldn't help but notice, and maybe there's nothing to it, when Kershaw was pulled from his last start, he kept the ball. He walked off the mound with the ball. I know he doesn't need Tommy John surgery. He's been through an awful lot. Do you think there was anything to that Kershaw kept the ball when he walked off the field?
Until you mentioned it, probably wouldn't have thought twice about it. But having the kind of career he's had and where he's at in his career, I know this year there was a lot of talk possibly of could he be headed for Tommy John. You're talking about Kershaw and Verlander, two I consider surefire Hall of Famers that have some life left in their game and probably don't need anything more to get there. But I know Verlander, coming back from Tommy John as an older guy, he wants to win a lot more games. And I would think Kershaw is similar. But winning the World Series maybe takes a lot less stress off of him from having to prove to people so much more. But it's a great question. I didn't even think about it because you don't ever take a ball off the mound as the season ends.
Yeah, you don't. Like, you have to hand it to the manager when he comes out. That's part of the ceremony there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing to follow. I'm sure the Dodgers are monitoring that very closely.
Yeah, and he's going to miss the postseason because he's got that forearm elbow injury. I don't know exactly what that is. It more elbow than forearm, John?
typically in a pitcher, the opposites work. The top of the arm is going to be you concerning here. If it's the bottom side, you're not as concerned. But forearm's never a great issue to have unless it truly is not connected to the elbow, which is hard to imagine that they wouldn't. A lot of forearm injuries usually turn into what people talk about as a precursor to Tommy John, but not necessarily in his case. It could be something different.
Before you go, introduce America again to the Tampa Bay Rays.
I just don't get it. Like I really am in awe of what they've been able to do. I will spend all day Thursday getting introduced to the Tampa Bay Rays because I will be doing a deep dive into their rotation, which is almost brand new. Their bullpen is as interchangeable parts. Their offense seems to just slug. Wander Franco is the real deal because when everyone was wanting him up in the beginning of the year and they delayed his clock for obvious reasons, but they're going to start two rookies that you rarely see from a team that almost won the World Series that left two of their stud starters to go somewhere else. The Rays are an amazing organization that, quite frankly, a lot of people stop trying to figure out, and they just go with it. And when they push a button, you know it might be the right button. Of course, last year, the button that was pushed in Game 6 filled their formula of while they went about their business. But a lot of people, would wonder what would have happened if they left in Blake Snell. They don't even think about it. They turn the page because they are on a quest to prove everybody wrong.
Always great to catch up with you, John. Have fun with the Red Sox and the Rays. Thank you, bud.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
That's John Smoltz, Hall of Famer, MLB Network analyst.